Hi guys, welcome to the second part of this award tutorial. So in this section, first of all, I'll try to recall what we did in the first section of our tutorial. We were able to build our Docker image and push the Docker image to our registry. We'll use the ECR, that is the Amazon Elastic Container Registry by Amazon. So in the next section, we are going to see how we can deploy this our image, or we can run this our image on ECS, that is the Amazon Elastic Container Service. But first of all, we'll have to answer some few questions like what is ECS? Now, uh, if you're rushing to see how to deploy on ECS, I think you should have an idea what orchestration is. What orchestration is. Generally, orchestration is just simply you have multiple computers, right, that work together as one. So that's what orchestration means. Like you have multiple computers that are grouped together to work as one. And the most common tools that we know out here, we have the Docker Swarm, we have the Kubernetes, and we have the ECS provided by Amazon. Now, the difficulty with Kubernetes and Docker Swarm is what you have to become an expert in a way that you should know how to update, patch those servers. If you're using a Kubernetes cluster, you should know how to update them, modify them. Like you should be an expert in it. And also the same thing for Docker Swarm. But now Amazon provides us with an ECS service that it's very easy going, that you just concentrate on your application. You don't concentrate a lot on the infrastructure. You concentrate more on the application. That is, they have a particular service which is called the Fargate. So with that service, you concentrate more on your application, which is a serverless application means you concentrate more on your application. That is the application which you're building, and you concentrate less on your infrastructure. So with just some few clicks and a few configurations, your application is up and running. Now, to use a Elastic Container Service by Amazon, there are multiple ways. You can use the console, which is what we are going to use in this tutorial because it's easy. Even, or you can use also the Copilot. There are multiple stuff. So, or you use the CDK, that's the Amazon Cloud CDK. But if you use the Copilot, you can use the Copilot. It's a command line. You can verify on their documentation how to use a Copilot. It's also pretty easy to configure and pretty easy to use. The same thing for CDK. CDK is also easy to use, but yeah, we are going to use a console so that we can be faster. And so, why we are going to work on this tutorial, we're going to see a lot of components. We're going to see certain things. But before going ahead, I would like to first of all give you a brief on what those components are. In order to create or in order to deploy an application on ECS, you need three main things. You need a cluster, you need a task, you need a service. Now, you can see there's an extra task definition. What's a task definition? A task definition is simply a blueprint of how your task is going to run. That means it's just like a file that defines your task. Then a task is simply your containers that are running. Then a service simply can, if you want to group multiple containers to run as one, like for a particular service, you can have multiple containers to run, or you can want to have a container to be replicated, you can use a service. Then now the cluster now groups everything together. All right, that's it. Let's just go ahead straight to creating our components and then uh, deploying our application. So I'm still on the interface where we pushed our image to ECR. So this is the image which we pushed to ECR. That is this our image repository. So I think from here I can just switch into Amazon ECS. You see, very easy. it's very easy to switch into Amazon ECS from here. So how would I do that? Uh, so I could just right click on it. It takes me straight to, give me a second, let me try to isolate this on its own. All right, done. Done. Isolate this guy on its own. So if I click on this, it's going to open a new tab for the Amazon ECS. What I always like to do first is always to create a cluster. Then after creating the cluster, I go ahead and I create my tax definition. Then from the tax definition, I create my services. But we could start with the tax definition first. Let's start with the tax definition this time around. Now I'm going to go to tax definition. Under my tax definition, I'm going to create one tax definition. So as I said, the tax definition is simply a blueprint on how you want your tax to be run. That is how it has to be run. Now let's see, look at like from here and take create a new tax definition. If I take create a new tax definition, we scroll down here. I'll just give it my name of my tax definition. I'll just give it my app. Let me call it my app because that's the name of you could, but know that in a real life scenario, you have to give meaning names though. Then here you specify the Fargate launch type because when you use the Fargate launch type, Amazon takes care of updating our environment for us, scaling of our instances, and also takes care of the like we have on-demand service actually. So when the service when the increase in demand when there's increase in demand, Amazon provides more resources. When there's decrease in demand, Amazon reduces the resources. So with the Fargate is the best way to use it. You don't stress yourself. That's the best solution. But with the EC2 launch type, you are the one to manage your EC2 instances. That means you have to create EC2 instances, install your Docker runtime, that is your container runtime, which is Docker. Then you have to also configure the security firewalls and all the rest. That's a lot of work if you're in a company that doesn't really want to take all of that, but you could just go straight to for the Fargate solution. Now, so we specified allow the I'm going to allow the Linux operating system architecture as Linux 8664. Then now here we specify the tax type. I'll allow it as one CPU. Then the tax role. I will ask it to create a tax role again. Since I'll allow it as none because this tax role allow containers in the tax. So instead of you creating, I'd like to create a tax role for us. Now let me specify the next place to specify where we have our name. That's where our image is found. You get. So I'm going to call the image as my app. But remember, this our image is found in which repository URI. I'll come back to my Elastic container registry. I copy my URI and I paste it here. So here we go. So next time, the port in which is running on. Normally when you're working on Docker, you want to run a Docker container, we specify the inner port and the out port when running. That is 80. Maybe if you are container running on port 80, and you want to the external port can be 80:80, or if you want the external port to be 50, you could 8080, you could do 8080:8080. So here we would in with ACS, you just specify the container port, that is the port with which a container was built with. And you remember that we use the Apache based image to build our image. So normally our port which is running or open is port 80. So I'll just allow the port on port 80. Then now you can specify number of CPUs if you want for this particular tax definition. If you have environmental variables that you want to add, you could add them, but unfortunately we don't have any environmental variable in our Docker. Then there are other things that you could specify. You specify also your CloudWatch definition, like where your logs are going to be saved. That means where, like if you want to verify the logs, where do you go to? This is exactly the log groups and everything. So later when we launch, I will show you how to verify the log groups. Then you can also add things like the volume, where you are going to add an EFS volume and all of that to link it for in case you want to create a volume if there are certain files that you might want to save. Generally, that you are not advise you if you're using an Amazon service, you should go ahead and be deploying your databases on ECS. You could just use the RDS solution provided by Amazon, which is far better and it's good too. So you could just use the solution too because that would be the best idea for me. So I go and I create it. Hope it creates. Okay, no issues. So that's it. It's been created. So it comes out. It is my app. Now after creating the tax definition, the next thing we need to do is to create the cluster. So I come up to clusters and I come to create cluster. Under my creation of cluster, I need to specify the cluster name. I'll just specify it as my app cluster. I'm using my app for everything. My app cluster. Then when scrolling down, you will see there, as I said earlier, there's the Amazon instance, the EC2 launch type, where you're the one to manage everything. You do the manual configurations. Like you see, it says here, manual configuration. You have to be the one to do the configurations. You have to want to manage your security and everything. Same for the anywhere, the Amazon ECS anywhere. Manual configuration, data center compute, it's the same idea. So that we have specified we have just specified just the the we have specified just the the Fargate launch type. So that's it, and which is the serverless solution. So I go ahead and I create the cluster. So give it a second for the cluster to be created. Alright, it's done creating. Now once the cluster is created, let's go ahead and once the cluster is created, let's go ahead and run the various stuff. Cluster is done creating. Let's go ahead and create our services and our task. So I'll create a service. So when creating the service, I'm going to specify the number of tasks in which I want to run in that particular service. So I'm going to create a service. So in the service, I specify exactly that I want, I already specify the cluster which is running on, and normally the Fargate, and then we specify the capacity launch, the capacity provider strategy. There's one thing I really love about Amazon. Amazon, even if you're doing for your first time, they make sure that they give you details of everything. Not like just come and see launch type. It explains to you that launch type directly, launch tags directly without the use of capacity provider strategy. That means it gives you exactly like an idea of what you are doing and what to choose. You get? So we are going to stick with the capacity provider strategy. And then let's scroll down. We want to create a service. The deployment type is a service. And here now we are going to choose our tax definition family. We created a tax definition called my app, if I'm not mistaken, and it has just a single revision. That's we have no revision yet. The latest one revision, just one revision. So let's specify the service name. I'll call it my app service too. My app service. And then the service type should allow it a replica. Now on this desired tax is where you specify the number of tags in which you want it to run. If you want it to run 5 tags, 10 tags, 6 tags, 8 tags, or the rest. So I'm going to just specify 2 tags for it to run 2 tags, like 2 containers. But you could actually modify or scale it up or scale it down depending on how you want it. I'll just showing you that you could do that. Then on the networking, this is the networking section, is where you specify your VPCs and you specify your subnets and everything. I already created this earlier, so you could use your default, but in a normal enterprise scenario, you have to use your private, you have to use a private, you have to use a private cloud, like you have to use private subnets to run your tags and your services. You get? And the security group is the security group which we are using, and make sure that on this your particular security group port 8080 is open. Now the last thing to add here is a load balancing. Now I haven't created a load balancer yet, so I'll just go ahead and create a new load balancer directly. So you see the way I'm going to create an application load balancer. See the way Amazon makes everything in one, like, but with the old interface, we are going to create this separately before come to ECS and try to join it. But they have updated this interface such a way that everything that you need, you can create it just on the go on one interface. So now if I specify my load balancer name, I'll call it my app LB, my app dash LB. I'll just specify my app LB, not dash LB. Then health checks 0 is fine. And then the container port that is linked to is 8080 because I have run on port 80, which is fine. I think normally port 80 should be open on our load balancer, security group, and everything. That said, let's create it. Hopefully, we don't have any issues. Okay, I forgot the target group name. Target group name, I'll just call it my app target group. My app target group. So here we go. It's creating. Let's give it some time for it to create. You see why it's creating, you could go ahead and see the cloud formation template, like the things that have been created. That's why I say I really love Amazon. Amazon is one of those services or cloud providers that really work like day and night. You see, you can able to monitor exactly what is being created, and you're able to see where it's going to fail, any issue. You see the logs are actually coming up. You see, like you say, creation of target group completed, creating in progress, is creating target groups done. You see, it gives you like every detail of everything you're doing. You can first further refresh just to see the various changes. If there's any issue, and there's one thing too, if it happens on creation and it fails, it's going to revert it back to the way it was, such a way that you don't have any things that any services are created that you're going to be paying for that you don't need. That you see from, you see that we already have infrastructure cluster app created, blah blah. The rest, we have many things to use too. I'll refresh it again. Still creating. Refresh from here. Still creating. We finish it like this. It's too slow. I guess I'll have to cut some parts out in this video because it's already taking too long. Let's just be patient and wait for the service to create. The task was done creating. Then I discovered that there was an error when creating the tax definition. Okay, the tax definition. Let me go to the service. because look at the service field. Actually, the service field, it rolls back automatically. So there's an error when creating tax definition. Let me go to tax definition and go down to tax definition called my app is what we use, and I edit it with actions, not on registrar. I need to do a create new revision. Let's create a new revision. The new revision here, I'm going to specify this link. We copy the wrong image URI. Yeah, instead I copy the repository URI. That with the registry you are not the image URI. Remember the image URI was supposed to be def. So this is the image here. So this is supposed to copy the URI from here. If I come back to and I paste it there, I think that is good for now. Let's see. Save it, yes. Create. It's always good at times when doing stuff you get to see errors. It makes you to learn better. So now if I come back now to the tags, to the cluster, to our cluster, and let's go to the cluster. That's my app cluster. Then under the cluster, I go ahead and I create a service. In the service, remember the service name. The tax definition is not normally my app tax definition, but remember that we did it. You just put a new revision right now from the error of last time, which is the latest, which is 2. And the service name still stays the same, which is my app service. Then down here, if I go to the desired tags, remember we use 2 tags. You could still use 1 if you want. Then now for the load balancing, add a load balancer. Instead of making known as a new application load balancer, then I'm going to specify the load balancer name, my app LB, and then for the target groups, I will specify my app TG, my app TG, and there we go. If we go ahead and we create it, I hope nothing goes off wrong. Field, let's see. Oh, field already. That's not the issue. It says specify the Fargate, my app, 2 tags, application load balancer. So why is it failing? It fails with the reason that maybe okay, the service name already exists. I think I'll just go ahead and create a new service then. But there was a rollback, so I don't think the service should be existing. No, I'll just go ahead and create. Let me also verify if the load balancer is there. I'll just go ahead and create a new load balancer. It's fine. There's just a different name for my app LB1. And then for the target group, I will specify the target group too as my app TG1. Then we go ahead and we create it. Click on create. So hopefully it creates this time around without any issues or any disturbances. It's creating, I think, yeah. So I'm going to pause the video and then let's resume when it's done creating. The service is done creating, so let's go ahead and verify if we can access it. Now you see our service is running. It has 2 tags. All the tags are running. It has 2 replicas. All the tags are running. So if I come to the various tags, or if I go to, let me go straight to, this is the cluster. So if I click on the service, I want to see the details of the load balancer so that I can be able to access it. This is a load balancer details. So if I just go to click on view load balancer, it will take me to a load balancer, which we can now use to access our application or our containers that is running. All right, so let's copy the load balancer DNS name and paste on our browser. Hopefully, we won't have to debug anything here. All right, there we go. And there we have our application running. It's not secured, but there we have our website up and running or ready to bust up. So you can further do things like maybe add a custom domain name with Route 53. You go ahead, you even since you have load balancer, add a custom domain name with Route 53. You add a security, use certificate manager to add SSL certificates and so on. So that's it. So in the next section of our tutorial, we are going to see how we can actually do changes on this our application. So we're going to build a pipeline that is going to update everything. Like we're going to when there's a new update, we just update and push to GitHub, then everything goes on well. All right, thank you guys. See you in the next session. And in case you have any difficulties, feel free to write it below on the comment section, and we are always ready to answer you and reply to your difficulties. Thank you.